Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Faith Family Fulfillment. I'm your co-host Chris,
And I'm Suzanne.
um, and this is almost kind of a follow-up to the last episode. We got to thinking about it during that episode. At least I got to thinking about it during that episode about the importance of sharing your testimony and how that might develop faith in others. And I think I've got a really cool story to tell that might help do that.
Then go ahead.
I will pray us in. Lord, thank you for this opportunity for us to sit together and reflect on just how amazing it is sometimes that you show up and how you show up and when you show up and just how undeniable it is if you just take a glance back in the rearview mirror and then how encouraging that can be to help you move forward. That's the story that needs to be told that gives you some glory is the story that people hear. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. So, this recently, I was blessed with the opportunity to come into a classroom of high school students and speak. In the town that I'm in, we have a partnership between the government, when I say the government, meaning local government, like city officials, policemen, first responders, business owners, and the education system. It's called the Wilson Education Partnership. And I was on the board of that for several years, and they started a program called Communicating with Confidence, where we encourage kids to learn the soft skill of interviewing for a job, being able to communicate, as well as fill out resumes. We just felt like that was a thing that was missing. And it's been really neat to be a part of that. We had one teacher in the beginning that said, hey, I'll help with this. And now there's like lots of teachers across the county, and the goal is that every single junior, and hopefully eventually juniors and seniors, will go through this program and learn the soft skill of being able to go through a job interview. Because the purpose of it is to keep the youth, the talent inside of our city so that we don't lose them to surrounding cities. But that original teacher, Jenny Shreve, she asked me to come speak to her class, which I've done on multiple occasions. Because I walk in the room and I tell them not to go to college, so they really like me. And they always ask me to come back, right? And so I kind of went into this not really knowing full well what I was going to speak on. And I had texted Jenny and said, hey, what do you really want me to discuss this time? She goes, just talk about life. The kids love you. Just talk about life, which is really just testimony. Like you're just giving testimony. And, our last episode, we talked about teaching from testimony.
Right.
And the things, the fruit we saw come from that weekend of teaching from testimony. And this is a little bit along the same lines of, like, for myself, taking the glance back and reminding myself of testimony. So I came into the room, and what I had planned originally to do was just kind of give the story of our company. Like, how we went from being farmers. My dad was a farmer originally, and kind of evolved, crazy as the story is, we evolved into the automotive dealership space. But I came in and I introduced myself the same way I do everywhere I'm allowed to introduce myself if I have any type of stage. My name is Chris Vester. I'm a bold man who acts with integrity and from love, and I stand as a beacon pointing to God's grace and mercy. And even though I'm in a secular space, I'm in a high school classroom, high school English classroom, it's not going to stop me from introducing myself with my statement. Because that's my standard statement. If at the end of my life they're standing above my box, I won't call it a box because you keep threatening to burn me up, not put me in a casket. And that's and they say that about me, I feel like I've done a pretty good job, and I would be pleased with that. So I started off with that statement and kind of gave a little bit of background, and I led it into the idea of coming into a room to interview, because when I'm interviewing people in our organization, we went through the process of creating core values and a mission statement about our business, So when I'm interviewing people, I'm asking questions trying to figure out who are they and how do they fit our core values. And so when I led into that part of the conversation, I said, hey, do any of you know what your personal set of values would be? Again, they're 16, 15, 16, 17 years old. Do you know what your value systems are? And what would you expect 16 or 17-year-old kids to say?
I would expect them to say no.
Right, because we know some 40-year-old people that don't have the set
Yes.
of values, right? Or don't know, haven't been able to identify their values.
Right.
And of course, none of them really did. Well, I've always struggled with the idea when people say the Lord spoke to me, or I call it getting a nudge, like feeling led to say something or do something, and I've just try, and I'm training myself to be better at it. I started work on this probably 2017 or 18, of when I feel that nudge to do something, I just do it. Like if it's not out of the accordance of what I think God would be okay with, and that's what I'm going to do. I mean, there's things that if I felt a nudge to do, I'd know, okay, well, God's not nudging me to do that. So it's a thing.
What is it that TMP says? Love God, love people, make disciples.
Yeah, as long as it fits that, right?
Yeah.
I know, hey, that's probably a nudge. And I got this nudge to create a standard statement for someone. And I said, well, just spur of the moment, I said, hey, who wants to play a game? And because in our organization, like when we do our new employee introductions, I introduce myself with my statement. Adam uses his statement because I've gone through this process of helping create and craft those statements with lots of people in the organization, not just leadership, but a lot of employees. If they've gone through leadership development with me, that's one of the first things I get them to do is, hey, let's decide what your value systems are. So he does his, Chris Hicks does his, Casey does hers, and now Rhonda does hers, like she's our HR. And so using the system that I use with them to create the statement doesn't take long. It takes maybe 15 minutes tops.
Maybe.
So I did this process, which is basically me going, hey, give me 5 or 6 things that you just enjoy doing. Make a list of, no less than 5, no more than 6 things that you enjoy doing. And this fellow's name was Keenan, and so I gave him a couple minutes, and he gave me this list of things. And it was, his first thing was, I really enjoy working. I was like, that's cool. And then the second thing was, I really enjoy hunting. That's neat. I really enjoy playing sports. Okay. I really enjoy sleeping. And the last one was, I enjoy intentional travel with my friends. Like when we pick a destination, we go. Which are all, I would say, pretty typical things of a teenager. I mean, the working one kind of surprised me because, you hear all the time now, this generation doesn't want to work. And the first thing out of his mouth was, I really enjoy working. He works at Chick-fil-A. And so the next part of that process is you take those things, you get each one of those, what's the feeling, like what is it about it that you enjoy? It's not just about enjoyment. There's a feeling it gives you. There's something about it that ours is fake family fulfillment. There's something what type of fulfillment do you get from that activity? And with the work thing, he said, I feel beneficial. I feel like I provide a benefit. I'm not on the front lines. I don't get to see the customers. I'm in the back cooking chicken. And he goes, and I know they have this expectation of a quality product, and I know I'm providing that, so I feel beneficial. I was like, well, that's pretty cool. What about hunting? He goes, well, I'm good at it. I eat everything I kill. So I kill for food. And I'm good at it, and I feel self-sustaining. And I'm like, well, that's a good one. And I said, what about sports? And he goes, well, I'm a captain on the teams. He played 3 sports, and he was a captain on every single team. And he goes, I like being looked at as a leader. I like that I'm seen as a leader. They picked me to be the team captains. And I said, okay, so this kid's working, and he's hunting, and he's playing 3 different sports. So when he said sleep, I'm like, I kind of get that one. I bet you are tired,
Right.
And so I said, he goes, yes, sometimes I'm just wore out. Really like a nap. And I said, what about the travel. He goes, he put it, he said, I like the connection. I like feeling connected to people. I said, okay. So I said, let's pick some of those words. I said, but I want to add one to the hunting thing, because that's really not we're in we're a country, so there's a lot of hunters, but that doesn't mean people are great at it.
No.
Like they can come to our house in September and hear people dove hunt, and they can see just how bad they are at it, right? But the fact that he had, killed and ate food last year, I said, that's pretty elite. And he goes, yeah. He goes, I'm worried about the word elite. Does that sound like cocky? And I was like, no, sir. We're gonna use that word. It's a good word. And so I crafted a statement to be, I'm Keenan. I'm an elite leader who constantly seeks connection and ways to provide benefit or ways to be beneficial. That was his statement. And I said, so do you think that describes you? And he goes, man, if that's how people describe me, that would be awesome. And his teacher spoke up, and she goes, that's 100% who he is. This is awesome. And I was like, okay, cool. So then I was going to kind of go to the next subject. And when I started to speak again, another kid raised his hand, and he said, hey, can you do this for me? So I said, yeah. So I did another one, and then we kind of took some pictures because the time was running out, and I was going to come back that afternoon, and Jenny came up and she goes, hey, that thing you do where you create a statement, I need you to do that the next time you're here. Like, that's really good. I don't think you understand how impactful it would be for kids to understand that they have an identity. Like, you're helping them really hone in and voice their identity. So I need you to do that. I said, okay. And she goes, but I need you to do it for everybody. Well, I'm like, well, I've only got an hour. And she said, I know, but get everybody to participate. And then when you leave over the next few weeks, I'm going to walk them through that process. She goes, I'm taking a bunch of notes, and I think this is an awesome thing. Cool. Again, didn't go in there with that intention, just going to talk about life. So I came back to the dealership, and the point I'm making about the faith thing is I'm going to get there. I had a conversation with Owen Boucher. He's in South Africa. We had a scheduled call in between that going to that high school and then coming back that afternoon. And he asked the question, because we were talking about all these different dots of faith, and he and I were just talking about even he and I knowing each other is a crazy story.
Yeah. I mean, he is in South Africa.
He's in South Africa.
Yeah.
And we're connected because of technology, because of, a platform that he is participating in that, but if it hadn't been for that, there's things in his life that wouldn't be happening now. And I'm not taking credit for it, but God put us there, So we were having a discussion about when faith shows up, and he said, do people ask you why your faith is so strong? I said, man, they ask me all the time. And he goes, what's your answer? What do you tell them? And I said, well, it's probably a simple answer. I said, but I just go back and look at all the dots that have connected that could only be God. I said, and I told him, I said, oh, and you and I look at this as a God connection. I don't know what's going to come from this. I know what's come from it so far, but who knows where it's headed. But when I look back over the course of my life, there's just so many things that it's just but God. I should have worn my but God t-shirt. But God stepped in. There's so much of that. We talked about giving our testimony on the last episode. It was, we went through this nest, but God. There's this faith building element of going through it and seeing what's on the other side. Mm-hmm. So I go back that afternoon, and I go through the exact same, the beginning of our story, going into our core values, how we, come up with our company values and statements. And I said, I want everybody in the room to take out a piece of paper. So I had everybody write down 5 things, 6 things. And then I said, hey, I need a volunteer. And this little kid, this kid raised his hand, not that little 17.
You say young.
Young kid, 17.
They're not little.
Yeah,
they're young.
That's the Nash County in me. Young fellow who had been really active and engaged the whole time, which was encouraging. Said, I'll volunteer. I said, great. I said, what's your name? He said, Michael. I said, Michael, what are your things? So he gave me his 5 things, and we kind of went through it. And I don't remember his whole statement because the rest of the story kind of wiped his statement out of my brain. Like, it's funny. I remember Keenan's really, really well, but the rest of the story makes me forget Michael's whole statement. But two of his words in his statement were grateful and motivated. And so when I first crafted his statement, it was, and one of his things was work. Like, he liked work, made him feel motivated. And spending time with family made him feel grateful. Those were the two I do remember.
And so, something about when people, he liked being there for his friends.
Yeah,
like
because people came to him and asked him about problems
right,
all the time.
Right.
And he said, I feel like, they come to me as someone who can help. Like, I like providing help, being helpful. Mm-hmm. And so in when I read a statement the first time, it was, I am Michael. I'm a motivated, I'm going to say something, helpful. And then the last word was grateful. And he said, I said, do you like it? He goes, I really do like it, but can I change some stuff? And I was like, sure, it's your statement. It's who you are. He goes, I want to flip-flop grateful and motivated. I says, oh, so you want the first word people hear, you describe yourself as grateful? He said, yes, sir. So it became Michael, I'm a grateful so-and-so, and to be motivated. So, which was neat that a kid or a child, 17-year-old fella wanted to be known as grateful. Like, that's the first thing he wanted people to know him as. And here's where the God moment happens. So there's about 700 juniors in the county, and that we live in. And so, he's one of 700 kids. But after it was over, Michael came up to me and he said, Mr. Vester, I just want to say thank you. I really appreciate what you did today. That was really a neat exercise. I was like, well, I'm glad you liked it. And he said, by any chance, have you ever participated when they give kids money and they go and they shop at Walmart? And I said, you mean shop with a cop? And he said, yes, sir. And I immediately knew who this child was. Because 7 years prior to that moment, we do Shop with a Cop, which it's a local thing. It's done through the county. They bring highway patrolmen, city police, sheriff's department. They all come to the local Walmart, and the county donates money. They have to qualify to be able to get the money, but it's $150. And they let these kids shop through Walmart with a cop, and we've always kind of been a sponsor.
And they're nominated through the schools.
They are nominated through school. They're nominated through the school system. And so I showed up 7 years ago, and I've done it, and we've done it for 10 or 12 years. It's been a long time that we've been doing it. And this one particular year, 7 years ago, this kid just touched my heart. It blew me away. He's the only child I've ever documented on social media that I've ever had anything to do with at that event. But when I asked him, I said, hey, where's the first place you're going to go? Where do we need to go first? And 99 times out of 100, the kids go, we're going to the toy department, because we're kind of said we kind of move them around trying to help them make wise decisions. And he said, well, the first thing I've got to do is I've got to buy something for my dad. I got to buy something for my mom. I got to buy something for my grandmama. And it was his cousin. And it was
it was not about him.
Nothing about him the whole time. And I'm like, and he said, and then I got to get some resources for my family, like some food and stuff. And I was just blown away. And I stopped and I said, hey, Michael, for a sec, can you give me a second? So I got out my phone. I said, hey, can you say that to me again? And he said it again. And I posted it on social because he literally blessed my heart that day. It was amazing. So I reached in my pocket. I pulled out another 100. I was like, we're going to give this kid's going to be like, we're going to bless him big. The first place he went was to the shoe department. He bought a pair of work boots for his dad. He bought his mom a pocketbook, and there was a reason it had to do with work. It was because he knew so much about their work life, So he had to give her a pocketbook because of where she worked, and it was, he knew the whole story. Then he got something for his grandmama. And again, the last thing he did was buy something for himself, and that was a shirt and tie so he could go to church. And then, Walmart does some sponsoring of it too. And they set the rules. So when we went to go grocery shopping, they weren't going to let him do any grocery shopping. So I had the cop stand with his basket full, that was full of stuff. And then Michael and I went grocery shopping together. So, that whole glance back thing of the only kid who was so ridiculously grateful at 10 years old.
And intentional.
And super intentional at 10 was now put in front of me again in a situation where I had been prompted 5 hours before to help people create a personal contract, to help him walk through that process, and for him to say, I want the first thing the people to know about me is grateful. And to have in between those two moments, someone say, hey, when people ask you about your faith, what do you say? And I say, it comes from looking back and saying, but God, only God. Again, he's one of 700 kids. He's one of, 25 kids a year that are picked out of the schools to participate in that program. He gets assigned to me. And it was funny because, we've got Chevrolet dealership, and he had a Ford hat on. So the whole time I'm shopping with him, he and I are messing back and forth about Ford versus Chevrolet, And it's funny because that day in that high school classroom, he was asking about Ford Mustangs. So it was just there were lots of little reminiscences about, that day that we spent together that he remembered. Because I don't look the same as I did 7 years ago. I'm not competing anymore. Probably 50 pounds lighter because
you don't have a beard.
I don't have a 5-inch beard hanging off my face. I'm a different looking person. But that moment was a clear, big memory for him. And then to be able to share that next space with him, to have him create a statement that I really believe he'll use. I believe he's the kid that would walk around and start introducing himself that way. Mm-hmm. So the whole purpose of all that story is when we think about ways to encourage people's faith. We talked about teaching from testimony. What I just gave was a testimony of something that built my faith up. I called my dad, as soon as it was over, I said, Dad, you're never going to believe this story. And I told him the story, and he goes, Chris, that gives me chills. I called you. I called Stephanie. Stephanie goes, that don't give me chills. It makes me cry. It's all these, but it's about the faith element of it, of building your faith, of going, hey, God sees you wanting to shine glory towards him, and then, hey, there's some glory in all of that for him.
Right.
In fact, that weekend I went to see Gabrielle, and she was complaining about, oddly enough, having to take statistics and looking at probabilities.
And oddly enough, that is probably her best class this semester.
Right. And I said, oh, you don't like probabilities? She goes, when will I ever need it? I said, well, figure out the probability of this. And I'm walking her through the story. And because I've talked about that kid so much since 2017. I said, and he walked up to me and said, have you ever done Shop with a Cop? And she looked at me and she goes, oh my God, it's that kid. She knew immediately who it was. And she goes, Daddy, she goes, I don't even know how you even start figuring the probabilities of that. I said, you can't. She goes, God can. She knew what I was saying. It's, when you look back and you go, of all the things, God's putting people in your place. He's putting people in front of you. Lean into that. Give them some time. Talk about your faith to them. That's the idea of making disciples, is sharing testimony and building faith. So I say all that to say, just like our last one, we talked about, hey, if there's trials and testimonies you've been through and stories you've had that have been a struggle, use those. But use the ones that shine the light in a way that's not necessarily a struggle. It's just a only God moment. There's no struggle in me having those two situations. It wasn't a struggle for me to talk to that kid in class. It wasn't a struggle for me to go to Shop with a Cop. But to have those two moments with that same child, that the probability of being in front of him twice is so slim, that it's, to me, a massive builder in my faith.
I think you have to be mindful that if even if it's not anything that's big, like me, obviously, you weren't looking at either of those moments as being this big monumental, like I'm going to remember this day forever kind of thing. The way you show up doesn't have to be in big, flashy, bold, capital letters.
That's good.
Sometimes it just is the quiet thing that you do for someone that is going to be only meaningful to them. I mean, like you don't have to tell anybody. You don't have to make sure anybody saw you do it. But it could be something that is just going to be so incredibly perfect and meaningful to that individual that there's no way that you would have done it without a prompting, because it's not going to hit right otherwise. And it's just going to hit that person in the way that they're also going to know, oh, that wouldn't have happened if only.
Right. So I hope Michael's listening, because he was such a blessing. He was a blessing to me that day, and such a faith builder later. And of course, I shared that all with Jenny after I figured it all out. Like I knew his grandmama had commented on the original post. I went back. I'm looking for her, and but I shared it with Jenny, and she actually took that video and showed it to the class. She asked for his permission, and then showed it to the class the next day he was in class. So they've all gotten to see him now at 2017 at 10 years old,
right?
To talk about getting resources for your family and getting, not thinking about yourself first. So it's a beautiful story. Thank you for allowing me just to talk by myself today.
I commented a few times.
So I hope it blesses you. Go out and tell some faith stories.
Or just show up.
Or show up. I think about it, in both those moments, I think I'm not going to say bold in either one of those. I try to be bold, but I was the same person both times. That's integrity. I was coming from a place of love and pointing to God's grace and mercy. So, if I look at my standard statements in both of those situations, I was being that. But like you say, not in a grand way, not in a shout it from the rooftops way, but just being, just showing up. So, thank you. I pray to send you and pray us out.
I'll let you. This was your story. We'll keep it consistent.
Right. Lord, thank you for just all those moments like those that where you show up in only ways that you can, but so undeniably you, because they are a blessing to me. And I hope it's a blessing to everyone that's listening to this to know that if they'll just take a minute to look back, that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of moments where it just had to be you. And I hope when they do that it does build their faith. And like I've said many times before, it's the ability to take the faith that we can see in the rearview mirror and apply that same faith through the windshield. Because when we move in ways that you ask us to, with full dependence upon you, you always show up faithful. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.